This is a brand new Enve Mog, and I've just ridden and just about recovered from a 215-kilometre gravel event as a way to really put the bike through its paces and also find my own personal limits as well. So the Mog is the newest bike from the US company. In a very short amount of time, they've gone from a wheel and handlebar and fork brand to a bike brand. First with a custom road, then the Melee, and now the Mog. And what's really interesting and exciting about this bike in particular is while the whole gravel sector is growing fast and the bikes are now diverging into two distinct camps. At one end we have race bikes, then at the other we have your bike packing adventure bikes. But what the Mog is trying to do is be the best of both worlds. Clearly a bike designed for speed and racing with the aerodynamics, internal K routing, but then on the other hand you can fit wide tyres, mud guards, extra mounts for bottles and bags as well. But can one bike really do it all, or is it compromised? In this video and at this event, I aim to ride it as fast as I could and retest the bike's performance for that kind of racing focused gravel rider. And in a future video, I'll hopefully do a bike packing version and really test the capability of this bike in that setting as well. But in this video, it's all about speed and suffering, lots and lots of suffering. And there they are, the famous stones of Stonehenge. So the Mog is clearly, as you can tell, designed for speed and going as fast as you can. And even with me powering the bike, it was a very fast bike indeed. The opening few miles of this event had the fast rolling soul-through playing gravel, kind of big US style gravel tracks, kind of going up and down and up and down. And I found myself fairly quickly in a group of 5 guys doing 40k an hour on gravel, doing through and off. I was going much harder than I had planned to go in that stage of the ride, but I was having loads of fun despite the pain, and it was a good way to cover a lot of distance very quickly early on in the ride. And in that fast-paced situation, in a small group, moving quickly, the bike was fantastic. From the fast rolling tyres to the low front end, a really nice fit on the bike. I was getting really aero as well, and the aero benefits of the bike I could feel every time we came to a downhill when we were freewheeling. I was easily pulling away from the people I was riding with, so clear benefits there. And it just made riding at high speed easier than it would be on a sort of conventional gravel bike. So I was loving the speed of the bike and really enjoying, despite the pain and the suffering, being in a small group, really working hard and working well together. And then I had my one and only mechanical of the day, a drop chain. I'm running, as you can see, a Shimano GRX 1x electronic group set, 42 on the front and 1142 on the back, and it's a group set I know really well, very popular with many people indeed. But on one quite fast and quite rough descent, I was in the smallest sprocket at the back and the chain fell off the chainring at the front. And trying to reach down and put the chain back on the chainring when you're doing 40k an hour on a loose surface is very sketchy indeed. So I stopped, quickly put it back on, and then chased to get back on the group to save riding solo for the next few hours. So a bit of a blemish on my report card there. And just for you 1x haters rubbing your hands with glee, I was riding with a chap later in the event who was on a 2x GRX equipped bike and experienced chain suck. And chain suck happens when you shift from the small ring at the front to a big ring, but the chain is stuck to that small chain ring and wraps around and gets jammed, and he had to stop to unjam the bike and then carry on. So mechanicals can happen with 1x and 2x, but in my experience it's fairly rare indeed. So the speed of the bike clearly impressed me. It didn't hold me back at all. But what also amazed me was the comfort, because I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting the comfort of this race bike to be that good, and I wasn't expecting to come away with a bad back. But my back was fine, my neck was good, and I had no issues really, apart from the usual sores, aches and pains you expect from being in the saddle for 9 hours, which is not something I do that often. And my hesitation about the comfort of this bike is born from experience with other gravel race bikes I have tested over the last few years. and the 3T Explorer Race Max and the Villiers Rave SLR spring to mind are two very fast aero gravel bikes, but really fail when it comes to comfort in my experience. I do ask a lot from a bike like this. I want it to be fast, of course, but I want good comfort as well. It's far smoother than I was giving it a chance to be. We have, of course, a 27.2mm seat post with a fair amount exposed, the drop rear stays, and clearly they've done their work with a carbon fibre layup at the back of the frame to offer a reasonable amount of compliance and comfort. But I should add, it's not as smooth as a Giant Revolt, Cannondale Topzone Carbon and the Specialized S-Works Crux, but closer to those three bikes and further away from the Villiers and the 3T in my experience. And that despite riding a fairly narrow 40mm tyre when there is space in the frame, remember, for up to a 50mm tyre. So I want to try a 45 and see how that feels and compares to the tyres I have on it right now. You can build an Enve Mog however you like it with any group set you want. I've gone for a Shimano GRX 1x11 group set, electronic shifting, really good hydraulic disc brakes. Apart from that drop chain I mentioned earlier, the group set was flawless. Nice wide range. There were a few climbs when I wish I had a 44 on the back like the SRAM Explore, but most of the time the 42 was okay. And on some of the faster descents I was spinning out the 4211, but I used that as a chance to recover and just tuck and go aero. It's a very nice build in this bike, it has to be said, with the Enve SES 3.4 wheels. Nice shallow section, nice in the occasionally blustery conditions we had, and the wheels, I have to say, are amazingly tough. There were a few sketchy descents where I smashed the front wheel into the ground and into rocks, the sort of impact where your arms and your neck hurt from the sudden impact force. But amazingly, despite smashing the rim and the tyre into the rocks, had no punctures and no broken rims or broken spokes. So the carbon rims, these Enve wheels, were super tough, and I had no issues really, despite giving them an absolute hammering. So really impressive performance indeed. So the bike will take up to a 50mm wide tyre, giving you loads of options, go as wide or as narrow as you want. I've gone for these Schwalbe G1R tyres in a 40mm width, 40 because of my go-to preference. It was my first experience on these tyres, and I was a bit nervous that they would be too narrow for comfort and a bit too fast rolling for puncture prevention, but they were fine. I had no punctures, no loss of air, and the grip and the speed from the tyres was very impressive indeed. So fast rolling on the tarmac and the smoother gravel and enough grip in the looser sections as well. And so far they seem to be really durable and tough with no cuts or marks at all on the sidewall or along the tread. Doing the event again, I would probably go to a 45 just for a bit more comfort, because it was quite rough in places, and I think the 40 was the narrowest I want to go on such a course and such a bike. Tyre pressure, if you're interested, was 30 at the back and 25 at the front. Probably a bit higher than I would normally go, but just a bit higher for the peace of mind on such a long event. How you set up a bike for a long distance gravel event is a very interesting question indeed, and one I did fret about quite a bit in the days leading up to the event itself. And as you can see, I went for a very minimal approach indeed. So let me talk you through what I've done. Now, a cool feature of this bike is the down tube storage compartment. There are two neoprene bags in there, and I put a spare tube, gas canisters and some dyno plugs and other bits and bobs. But I doubled up with a saddle bag with another spare tube, more gas canisters and tyre levers, just to make sure I had everything I needed on this long ride. And then in a tip I borrowed from the Gravel Pros is a dyno plug taped to the back of my seat post with some tape. And if I get a puncture, I can quickly whip it off, stab the tyre and carry on with minimal, fingers crossed, air loss. So didn't have to use it, but a nice little hack there, and quite a good tip if you are trying to ride these events fast or you are racing. So that's all my essentials and spares. And then on the handlebar, I've been testing the Garmin Edge 840, and the battery life of that was very impressive for the 9 hours I was riding. But I did find the navigation quite tricky at times, and following the line on the map can sometimes be a bit vague and not as clear as the chevrons you get on a Wahoo mapping setup. So good and bad. And then underneath on the K-Edge out front mount, which is very stable, it has to be said, a GoPro Hero 9 for recording the action. Really nice Enve bar tape, really comfy, enough cushioning as well. The GRX hoods are a bit aggressive. I did have sore hands, so some mitts would have been good for that ride. 2 Enve bottle cages, really secure. Had no problems with bottle retention from those. And because there were only 3 feed stations, I think there should have been 5 personally, I had 2 big 750 water bottles to keep me hydrated on what turned out to be one of the hottest days of the year so far. Pedals were the Shimano XT SPD pedals. I've always used Shimano SPD since I was a teenager, and I just like the way they work, and these strike a nice balance of price and weight and value for money. The only thing I would change if I was doing it again would be the Saddleback SLR saddle, which isn't my personal favorite. I've mentioned that before. It was okay, but I wasn't as comfortable as I would have been on a narrow saddle. So that's something I would change again. But apart from that, the bike was fine. And the weight of the bike, as you see it, with computers, GoPro, saddlebag, and pedals, is a very impressive 9.26 kilograms. So pretty light for a fully loaded, ready to ride bike. So I really enjoyed riding the Mog at this new gravel event, and it really looked after me, and I was impressed with the speed, the handling and the comfort. And I think it compares well to other bikes in this category, of which there are quite a few choices. But how does it compare to a Specialized S-Works Crux, which is similar money? There are some obvious similarities, but also some big differences as well. The Mog is designed to be fast and aero, while the Crux is designed to be as light as possible. So the Crux has a 725 gram frame versus 950 grams for this frame. This frame also has mudguard mounts, extra mounts for bottles and bags, and on the fork as well, where the Crux has none of that. Stripped back, there are no bike packing options at all. This also has bigger tyre clearance, 50 versus 47 on the Crux. And we have down tube storage on this bike and full internal cable routing, where it's external on the Crux. The Crux also looks more traditional with the round tubes, whereas this is very modern and contemporary with the aero profiles and the drop rear stays. There are some similarities in how they both ride. I mean, they're both amazing bikes to ride, fantastic performance, but there are some small differences. So the Mog has a higher front end, a slacker head angle, a longer wheelbase and a lower bottom bracket, and does feel more like a road bike in some cases than the Crux. The Crux has a longer trail, so the steering is a bit calmer, but the steering on this bike was actually very calm as well. I'm very impressed with how kind of laid back it felt. It never felt skittish or nervous, whether on the gravel, road sections, or in the woods on the single track where the bike really shone. So the handling of the bike is something I really enjoyed about it. When going from gravel to road, it felt right at home, and a really nice balance of numbers and angles I think worked well for the type of riding this bike is designed for. The bike also drew lots of admiring glances and interest from other people riding the course. I think the understated looks is appealing. Got the Mog logo on the down tube, which grabs your attention if you're riding alongside a person on a Mog. And it is a nice gravel colorway as well, and looks good when covered in dust and dirt as it is right now. I love how a bike looks when it's covered in dust, and it's too nice to wash it off. Better than being covered in mud. Yeah, it shows it's been used, abused and treated well as it should be. So based on that fairly extensive first ride, the Mog clearly delivers on speed and going as fast as you can, with impressive comfort and handling as well. But can it also do bike packing? Well, stay tuned for a separate video when I go bike packing on this bike, add some bags, extra bottles, and see what it's all about. And you see that video by hitting that subscribe button down below. And if you want to see a roundup of the best gravel bikes currently available, then watch the video right up here. But that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon.